Okay, guys, welcome to the event. So this is our first Wise event, I guess. That's like live breakdown of the session and all. So we were just having a talk last week. Prashant and I, and Prashant just shared the idea of doing this sort of event and like workshop and in related to Wise and all game audio related things. So just to start off, I just created a basic Wise session yesterday, last week, and I tried to add things that are very basic related to game audio. Since I'm also working in the industry for about 4 to 5 years now, and I'm also not a pro. I'm just like you guys, learning and doing things just like you guys are doing. Everyone is in a different stage, so I'm just here to share my knowledge with you guys, and we can just share everything that we have with the community here, and we can grow together. So, yeah, before starting, I'll just share my screen and give my uh, brief presentation, and then we'll get straight into our session. So, are you guys able to see my screen? Just if you can just give me a
Yes,
yes.
yes, we can see
Okay.
your screen.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. So, just a brief introduction about me. My name is Raunak Barde. I am a sound designer at Nodding Heads Games, the creators who created Raji and Ancient Epic. I have done my bachelor's in audio engineering, and I've worked on a bunch of games since my college completed. And in the beginning, I worked on a few uh, very basic small indie games like hyper casual games and mobile games, which really helped me in learning about all these things. And I was exploring Wise and Fmod and all the tools related to that in the beginning. These are the two games that are shipped, that I worked and that I've shipped. So Raji and Ancient Epic, as you guys all know, I joined the team of Raji not from the start, but in the middle, where they were developing the enhanced edition of Raji. Everything from the enhanced edition that you can play, all everything related to sound design and a few tracks. I have done. I have worked on those, and with me there was another composer and sound designer. His name is Linus. He has worked on rest of the other sound design and music, especially the music thing. So the music that you hear in Raji, it's done by him. He's in Greece, and yeah, that's what I worked on. DC League of Super Pets, I got a good opportunity with while working with Ogrehead Studios. So I was working with Ogrehead Studio and Zane, and they got a project to work on DC League of Super Pets, and he gave me the opportunity to work on the sound design of all of the elements in this game. So I was super excited to work on this, and I'm like really uh, grateful that I'm able to work on these two titles, and these titles got released as well. So that's a brief introduction about me. The focus of our workshop today is going to be, as the title suggests, we are going to look at Unreal Engine 5 and audio systems in Wise. So inside Unreal Engine, I've created this very basic setup where, so whenever you get a project, a game project where you are working from scratch on it, so you'll get to see these similar things, and you'll get to start working on very basic elements. So one of the very basic element that we have is Ambience and Footstep. So since this is our very first workshop on this, so I thought of choosing these two topics, and then looking into all of these systems that I've created. So we are going to look at imaginary ambience locations that we have in our third person template in Unreal Engine, and we're going to look how footsteps are implemented in Unreal Engine, how animations are tagged with audio, and there is a brief weather system as well that I have created, so that like if you play any third person game, any open world or third person game, you have different weather systems, different ambiences. So from beach to city to forest or anything you can just imagine about it. uh, we're going to look at switches, states, RTPC, random containers, blend containers. So for people who are not aware of these things, and for people who are very new to this, I'll try to explain it in a way that you guys can understand it. I'm not going into very initial stages of what is Wwise and how to start using Wwise, because that will be another topic on itself. Maybe later we can do that, but for today's talk, I just want to keep it specific. So Wwise is a tool that we use for sound, and we design audio systems in Wwise and then integrate it with a game engine and use those systems and how each of those systems work well inside a game engine. So that's my focus for today. Feel free to ask anything, interrupt me anytime, and we can just go through whatever you don't understand. And even for people who know uh, what things work in which way, or for people who are good with Wwise, they can also share their thoughts on this. So it's a community thing, so we can just share our knowledge together inside Unreal Engine. So I've been working with Unreal Engine for about 2.5 years. So I'm for integrating things and all with even Nodding Heads games. We work with Unreal Engine. So uh, I've gotten slightly good in this. So I can share from my point of view. I'm not a programmer, just to give you a disclaimer before getting into these technical systems. But there is a good thing in Unreal Engine called blueprints. You guys might have heard about it. It's similar to scripting, but it's really good for people who don't know scripting at all. So as you can see over here on the first image, you you have these node based things that you see on the screen. So this is basically what we do in Unity. Like you go into C sharp, and Unreal works on C++. So for people who don't know C++, C sharp, you can create your systems using blueprints. It's a very basic thing that you have in Unreal Engine, and it's a really good tool that I've been using. And since I've been using these things, it helps really to implement my own audio systems inside the engine itself. And yeah, so that's the topic of our session today. So before getting into all the technical things, let me just show you my Unreal session. And you guys are able to see, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just show you these things. Let me just mute my Wwise project so that I'll show you everything without any audio. And then later we can just turn up everything. And yeah, we can just go through the whole. So this is a third-person template that I've created in Unreal Engine. And as you can see, we have different materials over here. This is just this area just depicts a river or water area. This is very simple, very basic. This is a grass area, so we are just gonna trigger different grass and footstep switching sounds. And here I have created an imaginary area. You can just use your imagination for like for an hour or something, because I'm not a environment designer or anything. I'm a sound designer, so I thought of creating these areas, and adding ambience to these areas would work better. So if we go into the forest ambience, you can hear the forest ambience. Then the further our player character goes into a dense forest, the ambience will shift according to that. Then we have a beach area, and I have programmed few key inputs that change our switch or states inside Wwise that we look shortly into. And then we have cave area, a basic cave, and a deep cave area. So this is just to set a basic scenario that we mostly get in games. So if you start working in games, if you get projects, you'll get roughly you'll get somewhat this sort of setup Obviously there are more complicated things, but this is the very basic thing that most of the games work like most of the games have with audio these days. So yeah, that's our Unreal setup. Now let me unmute the audio and let me show you the level with sounds. So also just let me know if you are able to hear the audio from the engine, so that if we have any audible issues we can just fix that. Is everyone able to hear the audio?
Yep. Yes. Yes. It's audible.
Okay. So this is our basic footstep. So I thought of it as basic dirt ground, and then we have water area, and then we have our grassland area. Then if we go into the forest ambience, you can hear the ambience of forest or general wind sound. And if you go to a deeper forest, you can hear a lot of different animals, birds. You can hear the tree creaks. Then there is a beach area. So if you go to a beach, you can hear the waves. There are different parameters that I have. So on the top left, if you see, there is a debug text that's being displayed. So now, as you can see, there is a light wind. I'm just pressing a button over here that's switching the system on and off. I hope you guys are able to distinguish between the sounds.
Yeah. Yes, Raunak. It's
Yeah.
very clearly evident.
We have calm waves. We have strong waves. There are crowd. So in a real situation, if you go to a beach, there are people. There are less crowd, and then there's the empty beach. So these are the situations that I thought while designing. It's very basic, very simple, but the goal is just to show you how Wwise works with a real game engine. And then there is a trigger for rain. So heavy rain, light rain. There is cave ambience. And then there's the deeper cave ambience. So this is the thing that I have designed so far. And let me go into our Wwise session. And let me show you how the Wwise session looks here. So assuming that you guys are already aware of Wwise, some people are very new to this, or some people have been learning and used it. I'm assuming that you know somewhat something about Wwise. If you guys are not understanding anything about anything over here, just interrupt me, and I'll be happy to explain what's happening inside this system. So this is our Wwise project, and this is how it looks like. We have a project explorer here, and we have inside this area we have different sections of our Wwise project. So this area is the actor mixer hierarchy, where most of our audio sound design things happen inside the actor mixer hierarchy. uh, there is a master mixer hierarchy, which is just um, everything that's related to a master channel in a DAW. So think of it just like a DAW session. So you have different tracks, and then you have a final master track at the very end. It is something like that, but in a different way over here. So inside this hierarchy, I have created a Game Audio India hierarchy just to organize things that we have inside our project. And since we are dealing with environment ambience, and then we have player character. We don't have any npc characters yet, but I just designed it. I just kept this hierarchy over here, the actor mixer. So maybe later, if I share this project, and we can plan with Prashant to maybe get these two projects to the whole community, so that you guys can also tweak things, add your own stuff in it, and you can experiment with these things. So these two hierarchies are the main thing that we are going to look at. So before getting into the ambience, let's just look at the player character. So the player character, as you saw here, we have a player character that's walking around, and we have its footsteps. So the player character hierarchy has different actor mixer hierarchies over here. So player combat, obviously we don't have combat yet. We have the locomotion. This is the player character actor mixer hierarchy that we have. And inside the actor mixer, you can find, I have multiple actor mixers over here. So why have I kept multiple actor mixers inside this uh, like in this hierarchy? It's something very simple that we have. We do with music in our DAW. So if let's say you are mixing a music project, you have multiple things going on in your music. You have drums, you have guitar, you have vocals, and at the final stage, all of these tracks go to a master bus. And before going to the master bus, you also create different sub buses for each of these elements. So for drums, you have a sub bus. For guitars, you have another sub bus. And then you mix those things in a separate way. And then finally, the output of those bus goes to the master bus. So it's very simple, very similar thing is happening over here. We have the player character. We have the player. So inside player character, we have different categories of player character sounds. So in locomotion, we have the player footsteps, player jump or land. Obviously, I don't have those sounds yet because I didn't have time to go and implement all of the sounds together at once. So I just have the player footstep. You will also have player vocalization. So you have dialogues, grunts, and all these things. And once all of these audio is implemented in your game, and you are at the mixing stage of things, this sort of hierarchy is very useful for mixing. So let's say your player character and your npc character is fighting. There is a combat sequence, and and you think that your player character's audio is a bit louder in the mix. So in that case, you can just go to the player character combat and just lower the volume of this actor mixer over here, and you can just keep other things to that the normal state as it is. Or let's say if your whole mix of the player character, let's say combat, player locomotion, player vocalization, everything is louder than other things. So you have this ability of just choosing the player character's actor mixer and just lowering each of these things. So it's just my way of doing things in Wwise. Yours might be different, so that's how I have set this up. And the rest of the environment and everything is also in similar fashion. So after that, once that's done, let's go to the player footsteps. So as you can see, our player is walking on different surfaces, and we want our player to as the player walks on different surfaces, we want the sound to change according to the surface. So currently in our game, we have three surfaces: water, grass, and dirt, as you just saw in our demo at the very beginning. So this is a player footstep switch container. It's just like a container. So for people who are very new to this, new to Wwise, you just think of it as a box, a container. You just pick multiple sounds from somewhere, you put them into a box, and then add a switch in on top of those boxes. And based on those switches, so you name the switches dirt, grass, water, and whatever you want based on your game. And when you press those buttons, only then those sounds will play. And if the sounds are not attached to any switch, there won't be any output. So think of it just like that. A switch container is just a box, and you assign switches to those, and those switches are being called from your game engine based on the system that's designed, even that we look into now. So
Uh, just a
inside, yes,
just a doubt.
yeah,
So in Wise, we are setting up the random containers as dirt, grass, and water, right?
yeah.
So they come under a section of sounds. So when we link the switch objects, which
Mhm.
are coming from the game engine, which is Unreal in this case, so
Yeah,
how do we assign that switch object inside Unreal? Like, do
yeah.
we have?
I'm just going to show that
Yeah,
right
yeah, yeah,
after this. I'll just show
yeah,
that the whole system.
yeah.
Yeah. So this is our switch player footsteps. Inside this, you'll find few more containers over here. So for people who are very new, these are random containers. So just as name suggests, there is a switch container. So a container that holds switches, and based on the switch, you output the sound based on each switch. In a similar way, we have another box or another container that has different sounds uh, that randomly spits out the sound that you assign to each of these container. So in this case, we have, as you can see over here, if I'm selecting dirt, if I'm selecting grass, water, you can see different footstep sounds. And these are the variations of the sound effects that we have inside these containers. So for player footstep, we can't have just one footstep sound playing over and over again. It will sound very repetitive and very uh, it won't be pleasing to the ears for the player. So for that, we are just randomizing each of these sounds in different uh, sequence. Those things we can all assign over here that we have in general settings. I won't go into detail for each and everything, but what we have here is we are randomizing the pitch of each sound, and the pitch and the volume of each of the sound that's being played. So some randomizations are going, and then finally we are assigning this to the switch container in different switches. So that's what's going on in our player footstep switch container. And finally, this whole player footstep switch is assigned to a event. So Wise works on an event basis. So an event is, it's a very complicated thing if I go into each and everything of what an event does, but you can think of it as an event is something that is triggered inside the game engine, and once that event is triggered, it will trigger all the sounds or all everything that you have assigned here, like everything that you have created, a random container, switch container, blend container. We can trigger each of these sounds using an event inside our game engine. So that's the player footstep. Do we have any doubts in this so far? Then we can jump into Unreal Engine. Are we good with everything?
Yeah, so far.
Okay. Okay. So the footstep is done. Let me show you how our footstep is implemented in Unreal Engine. So as you can see over here, we have our player character, and if you move, you can see an animation. So whenever the player moves, whatever you are seeing the movement in the screen, it's all being done by animations. So if the player is jumping, if the player is walking around, if the player is running, everything is being dealt with animation. So here what we are doing is we are going to the player characters animation. So as you can see over here, we have the running animation of player character, and you can see a timeline over here. This might be something similar to what we have in Unity as well. uh, and something similar to what we are doing, we can do it in Unity. So it will be similar to all of the game engines, but the interface will be different. So here we have the player running animation, and as you can see over here, we have multiple animations. So player walk, player run forward, and as our game progresses ahead. So in a real game, let's say this is just a template. If you work on a real game, you'll have a lot of different animations. So you'll have attack animations, you'll have like very different animations, custom animations based on your players uh, story and players abilities and whatever you want to call it. So since we are focusing on the footstep here, you can see there is a timeline, and each time our player's foot hits the ground, we are triggering events here. So we are just going to focus on this event. So I have created this event. This is called a notify event. So whenever in the animation our player's foot hits on the ground, it generates a notify event. So it's notifying that yes, our player character's foot is hitting on the ground. And whenever it is hitting the ground, I am just adding the same footstep notify event. And after that, once we have this implemented, I go to this player character's code. So like I said, blueprint, uh, similar to scripting. So this is how the blueprint looks inside Unreal Engine, and this is our player character's blueprint. So are you guys getting this? Is it complicated, or is it all good?
I think it makes sense so far. It is like
Okay.
very straightforward. But if anybody has a question, please do ask.
Okay. Okay, so in the animation, like we saw here, we have this notify events triggering each time our player's footstep is hitting on the ground. So what happens when this event is triggered? So when this event is triggered, inside the code we are calling this event. So this is our event that is happening here. Inside code we are calling this anim notify footsteps event. And whenever this event is triggering, what we are doing is we are casting a line from the player character. So since we want to know on what surface our player is walking on, we have different surfaces over here: grass, water. We want to know what surface our player is walking on. We cast a line from the player's foot down, and based on the hit of those lines, we'll identify which object our player is stepping on. So here we take the reference of the player character and we cast a line. So as you can see over here, if it's clear on the screen, this node is called line trace by channel. So it will cast a line from the player character's footstep. I'll show that to you with a debug as well. So whenever our player is walking on, there will be a line from the player's footstep. And based on the out hit, so as you can see over here, out hit physical material. So based on each of the physical material type, we have dirt, water, and grass. So the physical materials is something that we create inside our engine based on whatever surfaces we want. So for now, I just have created these three elements: grass, water, and the default one, which is the dirt ground. So based on these surfaces, we are just checking which surface our player is walking on. And let me show this to you in real time by debugging. So now as our player walks, you'll see that there is a line coming from the player's footsteps. So if you can see, there is a line being cast from the player's footstep. So this line is detecting which surface our player is walking on. And once that is true, each of these dirt surfaces, once the code is detected that the player is walking on dirt, this is just for debugging. Print string, this node is just for debugging. As you can see on the very top left, when I play the game, you'll see dirt, water, and grass. So this is just for debugging purposes. We'll know which surface our player is walking. Once the dirt surface is detected, that's when we set our switch. So as you can see over here, is it visible? Are you able to read this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, so the question that I got when I was talking about the switch, so this is what happens inside the engine. In the code, we have to figure out how to implement things. So in Wise, we are doing all the system creation and all of the things, audio systems. We are doing it uh, in a straightforward way. But this is where we have to think like from where our system will be triggered and how our switches and how our states will be triggered inside the game engine. So this is where we are doing it. Once the surface is detected, then on the dirt surface, we are going and setting the ground material. If I just type, so we have ground material dirt, ground material grass, and ground material water. So these are the three switches that we have. And once that is true, we'll just set our dirt switch and then we'll post our footstep event. So player footstep. So this is what's happening. And the same thing is happening with water. So we have ground material, we have water, and then we have grass. So each time our player is walking on grass and water, this is what our system is doing. It's setting the switch, what type of surface our player is walking on, and then it's posting our footstep event. So that's how our footstep system works inside our game. So is there any question so far?
Ronak, just a question, like for anyone learning this for the first time,
Mhm.
they will also have to learn that visual programming, right? So that's kind of a prerequisite to understand how those things are working. And then they can figure out where to put the trigger points and so on, right?
Yeah, so actually for Wise, you don't actually need to learn this. This is specific for Unreal Engine. But yeah, if you want to implement your own sounds, this can be done with the help of a programmer as well, or if you practice your skills in Unreal Engine, if you learn through it, you can do it yourself as well. So yeah, like triggering these systems inside Unreal Engine, it's you might have to learn a bit about it, slight bit, not too much in depth about coding and all, but once you get a basic gist of it, you'll be able to figure it out. So I'm also not a programmer. I'm not a software developer or something. I am just a sound designer and audio engineer. But through doing things, I just learned about this. And these if you're talking about these audio kinetic or Wise switches and states, this automatically comes when you integrate Wise into Unreal Engine. So if I just show you, are you able to see this drop down menu?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So if I go to audio kinetic, or if I just type, yeah. So once you integrate Wise into Unreal Engine, you will get all these events. So post and wait for event, post event, post trigger. So just as the name suggests, you'll know what it is, even if you don't know any programming. So post event is something that you post, like you are posting an event, like we are doing it here. We are posting a footstep event to play the footstep sound. So that's something similar that we are doing for setting switches. If you again go an AK or audio kinetic, and if you just search for set switch, you know that it's setting a switch for you, and you know that you are triggering an RTPC. So if I type RTPC over here, you can get the RTPC value, you can reset it and set the RTPC value. So these nodes come automatically when you integrate Wise into Unreal Engine or any engine. So just like in Unity, you might be able to see these things in the form of code in C sharp, and before integrating, you won't be able to see these terms inside the script. But once you integrate those into the engine, you will be able to see all these things.
Right, right. So I
Yeah.
think what I meant was like when somebody is learning Wise for the first time,
Mhm.
they hear about the sentences like there will be a game call coming from the game engine to Wise. And
Yeah.
the question always is, how is that game call even coming? Like, how is the game engine informing Wise that, yeah, now this is the event that is triggered, or this is the
Mhm.
state that is triggered? So I think it makes sense now clearly that in this programming or in this visual scripting is where you actually add those triggers, and that's
Yeah.
when the call reaches Wise, right? So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's the question I was asking, right?
Yeah. 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 I hope this is clear for the footstep. And if I just show you how, if I just link the Wise profiler, you can actually see how it's working. Let me just connect it. So what for people who are not aware of this, we can connect the Wise project directly live to our working game project, and we can monitor what's happening with our system over here. So if I go to the profiler layout, and if I just filter out player footsteps, so you can see that our player footstep sound is being played. Oh, just a minute. I think there was some. And when our player is stepping on water, you can see that the water sounds are being triggered, and you can also see the grass sound being triggered. Yeah, so that's our footstep. Let's get into the ambience. So ambience is something where a bunch of things are happening. So just like you learned about two containers, switch container and random containers, there's another container in Wise that's called a blend container. So what blend container does is, again, you pick a bunch of sound, put those into blend container. It can do two things. The first thing is, whenever the blend container is played, it can play those two sounds, or however like multiple sounds are there. If we are not setting any blend track inside these blend containers, and when we play these blend containers, it will play all of those sounds together, just like we are setting a track in Ableton or something, and the playhead moves ahead on each of those tracks. All the sounds will play at the same time. It's something like that, the blend container. But if we create a blend track inside our blend container, so you can see over here we have a timeline over here, and you can see two ambiences. So cave ambience bed region 1, cave ambience bed region 2. And here comes the play of parameters, or RTPC. So as you can see over here, let me just just a second, just open my Soundcaster. So if I play the cave ambience blend, and we'll have to go to this region, play this. Yeah. So you can see that there are two ambience track inside this ambience blend container. So cave ambience region 1, cave ambience region 2. So just like in our game, what we have over here, we have two regions. One is cave ambience and cave ambience deep. So I thought of this as we might have a cave in our game where we have the first initial area where the opening is, and then as the player goes deeper into the cave, there will be a deeper ambience. And obviously we don't have any visual thing right now, but you can just imagine how it is. So this is our cave region. So let's say our player character goes inside this cave region, and just like we saw the switches in Wwise and those switches working in Unreal Engine, we have another parameter called RTPC, so real time parameter control. So it controls it in real time. So as you can see over here, there is an RTPC value called cave region, which ranges from 0 to 100, and we can just create any RTPCs in Wwise, and we can set the values of however we want. So the max value can be 100, or the max value can be 1, 1, 2, 5, anything. It can be according to our preference. And inside this RTPC that you are seeing, we have this interpolation time, that how much time it actually takes if the parameter is triggered. So attack and release, I think you guys already might know what's an attack, what's a release. So it's something like that. So whenever this parameter is triggered, how long does it take from that original sound to transition to the other sound or to the other thing that's happening with this parameter so far? So this is a cave region RTPC. Similar to this, we have other things happening inside our system with the ambience. So this was cave. Again, we have our like very hierarchical structure over here. So we have a level ambience blend container, and inside these we have the blends for each of these areas that we have. So the idea for this was to not to trigger each of the events whenever the player is entering each of these sections. So my idea was to, once the player enters this area, there will be a one play event triggered, and once the player gets out of this area, there will be that stop event, which is stopping the whole sound. But whatever happens inside this area, let's say the player goes from this section to this section, and from this section to this section, whatever happens inside this, it has to be triggered or controlled using these parameters that we have over here. So that's the idea. So when our ambience event is triggered, this level ambience blend is played, and inside each of these blends we have different sections assigned over here. So let me just emulate this whole thing in my Soundcaster session and so show this to you. Is everything clear so far? Anything that's not registering or anything? Is it all good? Okay, so this is my play level ambience trigger event, and as I just mentioned, we have environment region RTPC value. So when the environment region RTPC value is 0 or the parameter value is 0, it means no ambience is playing. So when our player is outside of this region, the green triggers that you see over here, if our player has not entered this area, this RTPC value will be around this 0. And once our player has entered any of the area, our RTPC value will be triggered, and it will play whatever ambience it has assigned to it. So let's say our player is transitioning from forest to a beach area. You can see a crossfade over here. So it's crossfading between these these 3 blend containers that we have, and then the player goes to the cave area. So these are the 3 regions that we have. Now inside these regions we have more things to trigger and more things to play. So let's say our player is inside our forest region, and inside the forest region our player goes much deeper into the forest, and as the player goes deeper into the forest we have more sounds introduced. So as you can hear, you have tree creaks, you have bird calls, you have, actually that's not a bird call, that's a deer call. It sounds like bird, but actually that's a deer sound. Then you have leaves rustling, and all those things that defines the ambience and the area that we are in. It is controlled with this RTPC value over here, the forest. And as you go further ahead, you go to the beach area, you can hear the waves lapping the seashore. And again, if you go to a beach, you'll find different things happening inside a beach. So you'll have wind. So right now the wind is very soft. If our wind parameter goes up, you can hear some wind sounds. If our beach waves parameter goes up, you'll hear more waves, stronger waves. And again, our beach is empty now, so our parameter is at 0. If our parameter goes to 1, you'll have some sort of low, like soft ambience for the crowd, not very too many people. And if this goes to 2 to 3, you'll have a lot of people in our ambience. And this all can be controlled in our game systems. So we have created this ambient system in Wwise. Now if we give it to the programmer, or if we get all of these system into the engine, there can be anything. So that's the thing that differentiates game audio from linear media. So in linear media you have a single track and you place everything on like a single timestamp. So if 1 minute there needs to be a thunder sound, it will play a thunder sound at that 1 minute. But in game audio it will be very unpredictable. So that's where these parameters come to play. And all of these things, so let's say the wave gets very intense, so this has to be linked to something in our game engine. So the best thing to link it to is either animation or visuals. So there will be a system for that in our game engine where the waves are getting stronger. So maybe we can link this beach waves parameter to that animation animation system inside the code, which tells our Wwise system to maybe increase the parameter to 100 when the visual starts getting very strong waves. And similar to that, every other system can be linked in our game engine. So that's how our system works. So let me just show the code side of things to you inside our level blueprint. So this is what's happening inside our ambience system. So as you can see, the green area is the forest. Everything that's happening inside this box, it's related to the forest. So as you can see over here, we have these green triggers. These green triggers you can see on all of these areas, all of these sections. And whenever our player enters this green section, that's when our so for this area we have very simple thing, not very complicated stuff. But you can imagine that your game goes further ahead and you have a lot of other elements added to your game, then you can link it to those complicated systems, and the ones that I talked about for the waves and all those things. But now our system is very simple. Whenever the player enters this trigger, that system should start working there. So that's what's happening here. So this is on actor begin overlap trigger box. Whenever our player character is entering this box and whenever this situation is true, we are going to set this RTPC value. So our RTPC value is environment region. So environment region, as you can see, similar to what we were doing here in our Soundcaster session, we have environment region and we are setting it to 1. From 1 to 1.5 or to whatever we want, where our like from place before where our crossfade happens, we can just add 1.5. So the same thing we are doing it here, 1.5, we are adding the value. Now this value can be either dictated through other elements of our game or we can manually add it here. Now this thing can be done with other elements as well. So let's say our player is going into this area and then moving away from it. So as the player moves away, based on the distance from the player character and this area, we can link this value. But at that point we will have to introduce a lot of complicated codes. We can do that, but to keep it simple, I just did it manually. So the thing that we were doing it here in real time, our parameter goes from here to other, and we'll actually hear the crossfades when that system works in our game, where the player is entering this area and then going away from it. So you can hear the RTPC value fading out. But for now, just to keep it very simple, I have just written the value manually over here, and then our forest ambience is starting. And similar in a similar way, in the trigger box 4, when the dense forest when the player enters in the dense forest, we are triggering again this value over here that we just saw here. When our forest value is 100 and our player is in forest area, you'll hear the ambience working in play. So that's something similar to what it's doing inside our code. And the similar thing is being happening to all the other areas over here. So is there any doubt so far? Anything that's not registering?
You please show us the uh, beach
Mhm.
RTPC system inside of voice.
Yeah.
How it was set up from the sound source, and then on how the RTPCs are connected.
Okay. So this is, I think so far it's clear that when our player enters the forest ambience, just let me yeah. So when our player enters the forest ambience, you'll hear basic ambience, and player enters the dense, you'll hear the dense ambience. This is clear. Now when our player goes to the beach, you'll hear the beach ambience. Now in beach ambience, I have multiple things going on. So just like I showed you, when the RTPC goes up, the beach waves are being intense and beach wind is going crazy. So for this, for to keep this very simple, what I am doing is I have programmed it in a way that when you press 1 on your keyboard, there is a flip flop. So if you press 1 once, you'll get the wind, and you press 1 once again, the system will go back to the normal default state. So that's how this system is working. So when I press 1, our beach wind RTPC that you just saw here, just let me go to the beach area. And this is our beach wind RTPC. When it goes to 1, you'll hear the strong wind. Goes back to 0, you'll hear the normal wind. So that's something what's happening here as well. When you press 1, we are setting the RTPC value to 100. And when 1 is pressed again, we are setting it back to 0. So the light wind is playing. In a similar way, we have the beach waves. So when you press 2, and in a similar way, when you press 2 once, the RTPC value will get 100 and the beach strong waves will play. And if it's pressed once again, it'll go back to 0. And the same thing I'm doing with the crowd, but this time something different is happening. This node, you can just ignore this node. So once you are pressing 3, the beach crowd value is going to the 3 value of RTPC, and there are many crowd sounds. When you are pressing it again, then again your value is going to less crowd, and then finally if you press it again, it will go back to the default state. So that's how I have linked it. When you press 1, 2, 3 till 7, I have linked. I'll show you other things as well, but for the beach area, this is something what's happening. And let me show you the same thing that I've done with the rain. So let's go to the weather system now. I'll show you the weather system. Inside our level ambience blend, we have the weather
Ronak,
blend. Yeah,
sorry to interrupt.
yeah.
Before you go to the weather system, can you
Mhm.
show for the beach how you had planned the sound SFX objects like inside of Wise?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
what are the layers that are playing at the same time and all?
yeah, sure. So if we go to the beach ambience blend, we have these two blend containers inside this. Again, I just like I showed you with the cave, we have beach waves ambience blend. So when our player is inside region 2, we are in a beach, and as soon as the beach waves parameter goes to 100, somewhere between 60 to 100, you can hear like heavy waves, strong wave sound.
Right. So can you also show the sounds that you have used? Like how did you, because now we are hearing some splashes and all that.
Okay, yeah,
So if you can show inside the blend container what's
yeah.
exactly happening.
So inside the blend container, we have two sequence container, and what the sequence container is doing is uh, inside the sequence container, I've placed two loopable sounds. But initially, I thought of it as playing a loopable sound, but I ended up not playing it as loop. I thought of creating two different variations. So I was just playing around with the trigger rate. So what trigger rate does is it automatically generates the sounds in sequential manner based on the rate that we have over here. But for that scenario, it was not working, so I just kept it to uh, X fade amplitude. So what happens is whenever the sequence container is played, these two wave sounds will play in sequence, and it will loop once the sequence comes to an end. Uh, Obviously, we are not staying in that area for a longer period of time, so we don't listen to this the switching of these two sounds. But this is something what's happening over here. Uh, before talking about those things, I just forgot to tell you about what a sequence container does. So just like those random containers, blend containers, and switch containers, the sequence container is, as the name suggests, when you put any sounds and sounds inside the sequence container and you play it based on the settings that you have over here, it will play the sounds in sequence. So right now what I'm doing is inside this blend container, I have set the play mode to continuous, and it will always reset the playlist as the as the playhead reaches the last clip, and the looping is infinite, and it will transition. So this is the transition rule. So just like X fade in amplitude, you do it in your DAW sessions. It's something similar. You are adding an X fade, and you are adding the duration of it inside this sequence container. Something similar, very similar to that, we have for the strong waves. And yeah, these are the two sequence container that is being brought to this blend track inside this beach waves, and then we are blending in these two strong waves. I hope that answered my question, your question.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
helps. Yeah. Thanks.
And the same thing that I just showed you, we are doing it with the beach ambience bed. So the wind parameter that's triggering this, same thing is being done, but instead of using any container, we are just directly adding the sound to this beach ambience bed. For the crowd, we have a switch container. So I created this sound as a loop for crowd. So many, crowd, and less. So these are the two values that I created for, and I have added it accordingly to the switches that we have inside the beach crowd container. So whenever the switch is triggering inside our game engine, uh, it will choose which sound to play over here. So that was the beach. The similar thing I have done inside every blend container. So forest, ambience, dense blend container, if you see, you have multiple random containers. So leaves, rustle, random container, tree creaks. So whenever this is played, it's going to play these sounds based on our RTPC value. Now, one more good thing that we can do with Wwise is that, okay, we can set different RTPCs in Unreal Engine, but what we can do is we can assign different values using those RTPC values inside each of these random containers or triggers, what random containers, blend containers, and we can trigger these sounds according to our specific needs. So what I thought as in this forest blend container, what we are doing is we are playing these deer, tree rustle, tree creaks, and forest rustle, all the sounds together, but these have different values inside each of these blend containers. So let's say we have assigned this RTPC of the deer sound, the forest blend. So what it's doing is using this RTPC, it's setting the value of voice volume. So if our voice volume is at if our forest RTPC is at 0, the voice volume will be minus 200. That's why you don't hear these sounds when you are in the first region of the forest. And as the RTPC value goes up, you are increasing the value of this object, the deer. Similar with tree rustle, leaves rustle, tree creaks, and vegetation rustle. So just like you do automation inside a DAW, it's a similar way you are doing the automation inside your Wwise session using RTPCs. So that's something that's taking use of in all of the ambience sessions that we have. Now this thing you can easily hear in the weather system. So let me get back to my weather system that I was showing to you. So if we go inside the weather blend, you can see rain, and rain has a switch over here. So there is a rain light looping sound, and then there is a rain heavy looping sound. So we are switching those inside Unreal Engine. And then we have thunder as well. So there is a thunderstorm, and there's no thunderstorm. So just let me go back to the Unreal project, and when I press 4, you can hear that there is rain inside our level. And if I press 4 again, you'll hear that there's no rain. And then the rain intensity is being controlled by 5. So if I press 5, the rain will be heavy and light. And when I press 6, there will be thunderstorm. So we'll be triggering our thunder sound and when I press 6 again, it will trigger back to no thunder. Let me show that to you in real. So we are in a beach, and let's say there is rain, and you can hear the rain. And let me bring the rain intensity to light. I think there is some error in my code. I was testing it yesterday. So for some reason inside my code, it's adding a low pass filter to the rain. So my intention was in Wwise, if you see over here in my thunder sound, and if you go to RTPC, you are seeing that there are different values being automated over here. So if you just see, these are the RTPCs, so environment region. So whenever our player is in environment region of the cave, so the value of the cave, so somewhere around 3 to 4, this is our cave region. At that point, our low pass filter will change the value from 0 to whatever value we are setting here, so 3. So we are setting a low pass filter over here. Again, why? Because I thought that going inside a cave, since you are in an interior area, you will be triggering, you will be seeing some filtering happening with audio whenever you go inside a cave area or whenever you go inside an interior space. So we are lowering the voice volume of these environment regions, and we are adding low pass filter to the rain and thunder sound. But I'll just have to check quickly what's happening in my code, because when I'm not inside the cave, the low pass filter is triggering back again. Let me just play it and check. Yeah, so now it's working fine. Okay, so are you guys able to hear the rain?
Yes. Loud and clear.
So yeah, so this rain is also, I have created a blend container. So based on each area, so as you can see, this is a light rain. When I'm at the beach, you can hear the rain sound a bit different. And when I'm in the forest, you hear the forest rain sound to be a different. And when the rain intensity is increased, everything sounds similar. You hear the same thing in the beach as well. But as you enter the cave, now you can notice slight bit of the filtering happening with the rain sound. And if you go to the deeper cave area, you will hear a lot of filtering happening with the rain. There was a slew rate for it. That's why it took a bit of time. And then once you go back out, the filter is totally turned off. Now let me add thunderstorm, and then you can even hear that a bit more evidently. So this is our thundering. Same in all the area, but once you go inside the cave, you can hear the filtering happening inside the cave. And once you go to the deeper cave, you can still hear the sound, but it's filtered. So that builds a sense of realism in our ambience system, and it's all happening based on the triggers that we have programmed over here, and using the same environment RTPC values that I just showed you. So I think uh, that's all so far from my side. Is there any questions from you? If you guys want to know anything about the systems and all this.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Okay, so my main question is the wait a second. Yeah, so we can implement sounds using Unreal blueprints without the use of voice, right? For example, basic footsteps. I saw some tutorials that people were using just the blueprints to implement this footstep sounds. But I also hear from people that say there will be a point where the uh, sound engine within the game engine will not be enough, and we will be needing middlewares, or we will be needing custom codes to uh, set up sound systems, like complex sound systems, the way we want it. So, from your experience, what kind of situation in a game do you think will have the need to code or go really deep into voice and figure out a complex system? Like, what kind of a game scenario would that be?
So, like just I mentioned this, the beach ambience and the system that I have created over here, we can have a lot of different things happening in a real game. So in this scenario, we don't have much going on since this is a very basic project and we are just checking how the system works. But the core element that we are doing here, it's going to be the same with everything. So right now we are just triggering this based on these triggers whenever the player enters and exits. It's a very basic thing, but as you work on real games, that's where the thing happens with game audio is you have to collaborate a lot with even the programmers. So you have to speak your thoughts, like the thing that I did just right now. I want a system where there will be thundering, there will be heavy waves, there will be heavy winds, and all these things. So you'll have to go and, I mean, talk with the programmers and collaborate and share your ideas with them, and then it'll make more sense for you to like go actually and collaborate with them and implement the system that you have in mind with their system that they are creating with more technicality, and then you can do your bits of things with Wise and the nodes that you have and the ideas that you have. The main thing is the idea. Your idea has to work with every other thing that's going on. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
That was,
Yeah, I think if you guys have anything that you want to look deeper into, I can show them to you with the Wise session itself before going into the next section that we have planned for our uh, event today. Is there anything that you guys want to look into, like how things are working in Wise and Unreal Engine?
What about this reverb automation? Now we have seen that ambience from one ambience to another ambience will be ambience
Uh,
over
your
APC.
voice is very subtle. Can you please increase?
So, can you hear?
Yeah.
So what about this reverb process? Like, here we
Re-
saw what is that ambience from one ambience to another ambience when we are moving. We can use this RTPC function so that we can automate it.
yeah.
So like this may how does this reverb effects work? Like from a person moving from a small hall to
Reverb.
a
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good question. I can show you a brief. I haven't set this up yet. I can show you a very brief thing how it's set up. Let me share my screen. Go back to Unreal. So with Wwise, we can trigger this in different ways. So just like we have created this trigger for each of these areas, we can, with Wwise integration in Unreal Engine, we have a reverb volume. So we have different volumes over here. So there is something called a reverb volume and a reverb zone. So we can just take a reverb volume. It's just like a trigger, and as you can see, it, since it's by Audio Kinetic, you can look at things that it has already. Decay rate, aux bus. We have to set these things inside Wwise. So let's, in fact, let's create this live. So this is our. Let's create it here itself so that it's audible to everyone. We can just expand the size of it and go to okay. So this is let's say this is your room, and before that we'll go to the Wwise session, and let's do that with the player footstep. So this is our player footstep, and just like I showed you the hierarchy that works just like a track in any game, in any DAW actually. In a similar way, we can set up aux buses in Wwise. So we can add a user defined aux. I have to think about it since I'm doing it live, but yeah. So we'll just use a user defined game aux send, and then we'll create an aux bus, call it reverb, and then in the reverb we can add a reverb effect. Where is reverb? We can use the matrix. Okay, we can just use any preset over here just for now. And I think this is our reverb bus. Can just test it here.
Yeah, it is audible.
It is audible, right?
Right. Yeah. Maybe we can like exaggerate the amount of
Yeah.
reverb. Yeah.
Okay. So right now what I'm doing is just for testing purposes, I added an aux bus which is user defined, but we don't want to do that since it will always stay user defined. We want the game to define what is the aux send. So use game defined aux sends over here. So now what we can do is we can generate the sound banks. Go to sound banks. Go to Unreal Engine. We'll build the banks. Generate sound banks. Okay, the sound bank is generated. Now what we can do is we can over here in this trigger box, there will be an option for user defined. Yeah. So here we are going to, okay, we'll have to add the aux bus as well. So we created a new aux bus for reverb, and we are just adding that to our game over here. So that's what I'm doing. Where's the aux bus? Yeah, buses.
Just a question. So you have already created an aux bus inside Wise, right?
Yeah.
So now we are creating another one inside of Unreal.
No, we are bringing that same as an audio asset inside Unreal.
We can browse the individual components like you are doing, right? Is that possible?
Yeah, so Wise and Unreal are linked together, and this is called a Wise browser. So whatever we have inside our Wise, you can see everything over here. So why am I bringing all these together here? So in Unreal, it works in a similar way. If you don't have things inside the folder, content folder, it won't show up here. So since I just brought this reverb bus here, now you can see that it's visible here. Does that make sense? So whatever, so think of each of these elements inside Wise as an asset that we are bringing it inside the Unreal Engine. So now that we have assigned this reverb bus over here, and if we go, are you able to hear?
Yeah, there's a lot of reverb now.
Now back to the normal without reverb sound. So whenever we are in this area, the reverb will be triggered, and whenever we are out of this, the reverb will be back to normal. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think we are almost done with the time for our workshop. So do you have any other questions? Like
No, just a question about the last thing we worked on. So when it comes to assigning game-defined aux,
yeah.
we have to link the aux bus which is coming from Wise within the game engine, and then the game engine will automatically know that Wise game-defined aux, they both connect, right? I think I confused you. What I was trying to say was do we have to set up the aux beforehand in the game engine so that Wise can understand what a game-defined aux means?
Game defined aux just means like you are assigning the aux bus inside Wise inside Unreal Engine, and then that aux bus is being selected in the audio engine that Wise has. So just now what I did, that's something similar to what I did just right now. So game defined aux it just means like you are assigning the aux bus inside the game engine, and the other thing is you are assigning the aux bus inside Wise itself. So if the Wise inside the Wise, if you assign that inside Wise itself, then the reverb will always be there. Or the other thing is you can automate it using the RTPC or any other thing system. But game defined is you can define the aux bus inside the game itself, game engine. So in this way, you can assign different aux buses to different areas inside your map. So that makes more sense using the game defined options.
Thanks, Raunak, I got it, yeah. Also, is it possible for you to show us a RTPC controlled reverb system, or is it too late right now?
I'll have to design that, and I think we are already over our time.
Thanks. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think maybe like this is like a continuous conversation even beyond the workshop. So maybe we can even continue discussing these things in the Wise channel uh, as a discussion and as some more ideas and all that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so that's all for my workshop. So before closing, I would just like you all to know that after this workshop, we have a session uh, that actually a game audio challenge that me and Prashant thought, and it's for you guys to like use Vice and use your own creativity, just like we did right now. Just create. You don't have to go into Unreal Engine and create all these things. You can just take a Vice session, and you can just imagine any of the things that we just did right now. But there is a criteria, so just let me get the document that we have for the challenge. So where should I post it, Prashant, in the general or in this chat itself?
No, I have the link that I can share. And
Okay, yeah,
actually, you know what, Ronak, I can probably share my screen for this
yeah,
part.
sure.
Right. Just before we do that, I'm just noticing there is some activity box.z.io. I'm not sure if it is spam or it's created by someone. Can any of you just check once? Did I create that by mistake or?
That's an activity that anyone can do, I guess.
Right. Uh, okay, just a second.
I think it's from my side. I clicked the wrong one.
Yeah, whoever just can you just like close it because we just want to make sure that we don't have anything else going on. Right. Anyways, coming
I don't
to
know how
this.
it happened. Just I'm checking
Sorry.
how to close it. I don't know how it happened, but I'm trying to close it.
Oh, okay. Let me just check if I can override that from here. You know what? Maybe Shankar, if you like disconnect and join again, maybe that would help.
Yes, I'm going to.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Right. So again, thank you so much, Ronak, for taking the initiative for actually taking this workshop because it's also important that we have the community taking the step up and sharing ideas and everything with everyone. Before we move to the challenge, any thoughts by anyone in terms of what your takeaway was from today's workshop? People who, for example, are experienced in this, who are already doing something in Unity and Wise, or just in Wise, and also people who are very new and just starting to learn Wise. Like maybe you can share some thoughts before we get to the challenge.
Yeah, so I had a question. So basically, I haven't yet started any of this. Like, I'm totally noob to this. So since there are many softwares which where we can learn, so can you just like give a short brief of what are the softwares and what are their their pros and cons? I mean, just a basic overview, or like what should we go for learning? Like this software would be much easier to learn or something like that, if there is anything.
Right. So, Ronak, you want to take that up?
I think like these softwares look a bit complicated if you are looking at the first place, but when you start diving into it, it'll get easier. And there are a lot of resources online that you can use, and once you start using those, you'll be like getting really good at it. So that's how I learned. And yeah, like it's not very complicated or easy sort of thing, but yeah, you can get a lot of resources online and you can just use that and you can get really good at it.
Right.
Mm.
Exactly. I mean, I have the same thought. So maybe your name is Himanshu, right?
Yeah.
Right. So Himanshu, like I think a lot of times the question for people who are new is, should we learn Unity first? Should we learn Unreal first, or Wise or Fmod? Actually, the correct answer, there's no correct answer to it. So the idea is that you have to start somewhere, but it's recommended that you learn at least one game engine and at least one game audio middleware. Wise has a really good documentation and resources available. Plus, it has much more features inside of it, which is why we thought we will do a Wise plus Unreal workshop first. And also that would be a good place for you to start as well. So
Mhm. Mhm.
right. So I think what we can do is we can just quickly check into the challenge itself. It's not necessarily a challenge, it's more of an activity, because what we have noticed, so this has been happening for more than like 3-4 years now, the game audio stuff, like taking initiatives to do workshops and getting people to start to learn. But what I noticed is that many times people learn the theory of it, or maybe we watch the tutorials, but don't really practice. So Ronak and I were discussing, okay, how can we enable that to happen? And one of the idea was to basically, why not just give people a way to actually do something based on some questions and based on some hints. So let me share my screen and just show you all what the challenge is about. And I think that will give you a lot of visibility into that. So first of all, a quick check. How many of you are new to Wise or learning Wise right now? Can you just mention in the chat just so that we understand where you are? You can also mention if you have not started at all, and maybe now is when you will probably start. Okay. Right. Okay. Awesome. So I think this is a good place to be. Not some of you are yet to start. Some of you have started. Some of you are almost like covering up a few percentage of it, like Ashwin mentioned. So what we will do is in today's the challenge that we have, it will be a week long challenge. So it will not be just for one day. So it's not like you have to finish within tomorrow. Uh, so if you notice the workshop that Ronak shared, you actually got to see the visibility of how a game audio person thinks, right? So Ronak, when he was building the Unreal project, he had to imagine stuff in terms of what would happen in the game and how that will interact with the audio. There can be surfaces, there can be environment changes, there can be reverb zones and all that. And based on that, he then made a system inside of Wise and then also a game inside of Unreal Engine, and they connected both the things. So the main step is to learn how to plan and how to think of these systems. And on that basis only is where we have decided this quest or activity. So if you all can basically click on watch stream and see my screen, just let me know when you're able to see it. Feel free to post in the comments. Right. Okay. Yeah, just one confirmation is good enough. So basically, the idea is that the task is that you have to create a soundscape inside of Wise, imagining that it is for a game or a scenario where there is a playground, a kid's playground, and there is a magic spell and all happening there. So that's the challenge. That's the fun bit. We have given some points to help you think of how you can do it inside of Wise. So you need to have at least one or few ambiences that you can create. For example, you can have an ambience for a playground. You can have multiple layers to it. For example, there are kids playing, the kids shouting and playing somewhere. There could be a quieter version and so on. You can also make magic spells. Imagine that there will be a trigger inside of Wise where when you play that trigger, play that event, a magic spell sound plays. You can even randomize it, like Ronak showed how footsteps were getting randomized inside of Wise. And you can also make another event where the kids are getting amazed. So whenever there is a sound of magic, it is followed by kids saying, "Whoa," or something like that, right? So that's the soundscape part of things. You have to create this system inside of Wise. And then it comes the dynamic part where you can inside of Wise make RTPCs or states or whatever you want eventually to be able to change the time of the day. Like, for example, when you notice when Ronak was blending between different sections or switching between different like platforms on which the character is walking, the footstep sound was changing, right? So you can also think of some systems that will allow you to change the time of the day. Like there is an ambience playing, but if you change one parameter, the ambience goes from morning ambience or an evening ambience with kids playing to a night ambience where the crowd is not there and there are some cricket sounds and so on. You can also think of a parameter which will decide the intensity of the spell. And you can also kind of control if there are too much crowd in that environment or less crowd. Now, again, because many of you are new to it, when you read about this, you might be like, okay, this is too complicated. I don't know anything about Wwise. How will I do it? So the answer is that you start learning Wwise. You start with the 101 session, 101 series. And as you learn that, you will kind of start to think about answers to this. For those of you who have already learned Wwise, maybe you can already start working on this challenge. And you can also help somebody who is learning new, right? So this is a week-long challenge. If a majority of you think that we should give 1 month for it, we are open to that as well. So we can give you a 1 month time. But at the end of the 1 month, what you can do is just submit your Wise project that has all of these things happening and kind of work that way. So again, that is the challenge. You can also use this another document where you can actually collaborate with your team members. Let's say you all decide that, okay, I don't want to do this challenge alone. It's too complicated. I want to collaborate with somebody who already knows. For example, Ashwin is learning. Dhruv already knows Wise, has been using it in this project. Raunak is already using it in the project. I'm also there to help. Tana is also there. So there are a lot of us who are familiar with Wise and can guide you. So you can also like form teams and you can participate that way. And this is a document you can use to basically interact. And once you are done, once you are ready with everything, all you have to do is basically follow this submission process, which basically is a Google form where you just have to fill your name and everything and just upload your Wise project or just put a link to your Wise project. And that's about it. That's as straightforward as possible. There is no Unreal Engine involved because it's for beginners. And at the same time, what we can do as a community to facilitate your learning is that, first of all, we can extend the deadline by a month, right? So that people actually do some stuff. And at the same time, we can schedule a weekly meetup on every Sunday. That way, all of you can around say 11 a.m. hop on here. If somebody has already started creating, maybe you can showcase stuff that you have done. Other people will be able to learn. And if you are already completed with your project, you can actually just tell the answers that, hey, this is how I have approached. Maybe you can do the same thing. Eventually, the main motive is not to figure out who is winning at this, but actually getting people to do some stuff. There's enough of sound design challenges where people actually make sound design for a video of a game and think they're working on game audio. That's not game audio, that's still post production linear media because you're actually just working on video at the end of the day. So our aim is that more people in the community, more people in India actually do hands-on activities. So if you notice, none of this task mentions and explains what you should do. We are not revealing whether you should use RTPCs or states. It's for you to figure out. And that's the whole idea here. Like even when you notice when Ronak was explaining, he was explaining to you in terms of how the systems work from a game player's perspective. I am walking on this surface. And then he kind of explained how those footsteps are planned out in the source code inside of Unreal and also in the systems inside of Wise, right? So this is the challenge. We'll keep it for a month. Take the time, explore Wise, come back with this. Even after a month, if you have not completed this, it's completely okay. How much ever you have completed, just submit that because that submission process will kind of force you to actually learn, right? So even if you have done, say, just one sound you imported to Wise and you did not do anything else, just upload that. Just like for you to be aware of how much progress you have made and how much more you should explore. So what we will do is, this is the idea, this is the game. The doc link I will share here in the chat. I'll also post in the events channel as well. Use the Wise channels to ask questions, get people to help you out. And if you are very new and you're just starting out in Wise, just look for the Audio Kinetic Wise 101 course. Ashwin, like if you have that handy, maybe you can post the link of that so people can basically explore that. Right. So that's the idea, right? We do a workshop that kind of gives you visibility into how things work from a game audio person's point of view, and then you kind of participate in the challenge. Does that sound fun? Can all of you just mention in the chat so that we see how much excitement there is? I know it's all like slightly complicated for people who are new to it, but at least we'll go somewhere. We'll learn something in a month. I'm just not sure what the date is after a month. Can any of you tell what's the? Let me just check.
It's Thursday, I guess.
Right. So maybe we could do July 20th. Does 21st July, does 21st July work for everyone? It is a Sunday. 21st July, 11 a.m. IST. Does this timing work for all of you? Okay. So I'll just change the deadline here as well. So on 21st July, 11 a.m. All right. Again, just to reiterate, the aim here is to not actually finish the challenge. And I don't want, I mean, I have to emphasize this a lot. And I'll give you some analogy that we do in the music tech community. So we have another Discord server where we talk about audio software and all that. So we do something called hackathon. And hackathon is basically a time limited activity where a bunch of people come together, they ideate and they make something. Majority of times in those 2 days of hackathon, nothing gets created, but people still document, people still mention what I learned, what I explored, how much I explored, and that's it. They just wrap it up there. But that activity kind of gets you to actually do some stuff, which is why we want to emphasize that again, even after like on 21st of July, if you learned, for example, how to add random containers, how to make events, and you could only do only till that much, that also is a good progress. You know more than what you know today, right? Now, for those of you who are slightly more experienced, please feel free to like help out the community members, like if they have questions, because yeah, your role comes into this place. And hopefully, like maybe within 2025, we will have a lot of game audio experts in from India, and that will kind of make big companies to set up audio departments in India. As of now, only Rockstar does it, and not many people do it. Good new gaming companies, for example, are setting up departments of audio. Otherwise, everybody just gets a freelancer who does not work on game audio. They just work on the visual side and like the sound design side of things. But the aim is that we actually change that landscape at an industry level in India. And that's where all of you basically can play the role there. So yeah, any thoughts on this? Any suggestions? You might also have a question on, can we get access to the project that Raunak made for Wise and Unreal? And we're also actually thinking of making a GitHub repository. We'll release all these things, but we want to first like structure it in terms of comments and everything, so it becomes easy. But either way, I think from what we're understanding in the comment section is that the people are new, so learning Wise will also take time. And by that point, you probably have a lot of like these project files as well that you can access. Any thoughts, any ideas, any questions? Ronak, you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, I think Ashwin wants to say something.
Thanks, Ronak. Actually, this is just an idea, Prashant. So, for anyone that's learning Wise and Unity or game engine specifically, right? So, basically these softwares, right? They are like really buggy. I mean, the versions that you have to be using, you have to be really aware of it. Like, Wise is really uh, only works with a specific version of Unity. The newest version may not be work with the oldest version of Wise and that kind of stuff. Even then, when you get the versions correct, some components inside of it might not work as we may intended. Like we might be doing it the other way in the older versions, but in the newer versions, we might not have to do it in the same way. There might be a different way to doing it. So I was encountering a lot of issues when I was trying to learn Unity because and I was just surfing through the web and I just thought of creating a community spreadsheet of encountered Wwise and Unity errors. So if someone is getting an error, they are more that it's most likely that someone else in the future might get the same error following a same tutorial or an article or something like that. So I thought of like if someone gets an error, just post it in the community spreadsheet. And if you are able to find a solution for it, you can mark it as the solution is found and this is how I fixed it. If the solution is still not found, you can just leave it and you can progress with your other things. So people coming after you, or like people who uh, like stumbles upon this error and doesn't know how to fix it, can reference that community spreadsheet and maybe fix the errors quickly.
I think that's a great suggestion. I'll
Yeah.
actually just again share my screen for one thing that we showed briefly, but I think Ashwin, I've added that your suggestion there. So the document that we have shared for the challenge, which tells you what the task is, at the bottom it also has this. Feel free to use the rough document to collaborate. So this will take you to this new document. So there are like multiple sections here, but one of the section is about notes for everyone. So like this could be the document that you could use for it. So while you're learning Wise, if you come across an like bug or a problem, just write it down here, and everybody else will be able to see that and have the this one. So I think so that should solve for this specific challenge, and we'll also make a document in the future which is specific to Wise and Unreal and so on. Right. All right. So I think uh, as a, I mean, as like people who are taking initiatives, we can just nudge people. Eventually, it's all about you actually doing the effort. And I think if any of you follow Akash Thakur, in many of his presentations and emails, he specifically mentions that game audio industry is more about people who persist. Like 1,000 people show interest, they enter, and then out of that, say 10 actually like sustain, because a lot of people just like give up and they don't take the steps. So while it is also challenging to find resources, sometimes it is challenging to find mentors, which is why this whole activity. And the ball is on your court now for you all to basically figure out and take the initiative. As of now, we have at least like 17, 18 people in the call. We will see how many people actually submit on 27 July. Right. So yeah, that's also something interesting to watch. So I think Ronak, that covers the challenge part as well, unless you want to
Yeah.
add something. I have to add like one more thing after that.
Yeah, like it was a great session for me as well to share these things with you guys. Like even when I was starting out in 2019 or something, I had zero knowledge about Wise and Fmod and any of those things. And even I didn't find any communities like this that like helps people know more about these things. So I think from that standpoint, I'll be really happy to help share my knowledge as well. uh, there might be people who are more experienced in this industry, but yeah, especially with this group, I think it will be a really good place for us to learn things, especially from an Indian standpoint, since there are very less people in India who are exposed to these things. So yeah, I think we should like look forward to growing this community and helping everyone else. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ronak. So I think just in the interest of time, because we're already at 1 p.m., I just want to mention a few things. See, the thing is, when it comes to presentations and sharing, like taking a workshop and all, a lot of times it's not about being an expert in something, but also about sharing your knowledge, right? It helps you in multiple ways. It helps you actually learn how to share your ideas with other people. Let's say I have like the best idea in the world, right? Maybe the entire world will change because of my idea. But if I don't know how to communicate to the other person, it's useless, right? It's just, it will die with me, right? So this is where the community-led events come in. If you have something that you want to share, like Ronak took the initiative, he actually spent the whole week building that whole project and actually also kind of preparing the Wise and Unreal in a way that's very simplified. So maybe a month later, when we actually release that as a project, anybody who wants to work and learn this will have a very lightweight project. You don't have to worry about a very complicated game, which is kind of lagging your system and all that. So if you want to take an initiative like this, if you learn something and you want to showcase, I know like many of you who are slightly expert in the game audio world might actually find this a good platform to showcase your skills. So why not do that? Why not share ideas for that? So for that, what we've done is we have prepared this Google form, which just basically is you informing us that, hey, I also want to host an event. I also have some interesting idea that I want to showcase, and can I do it? And the answer is yes. If you see this, if you click on watch stream and see my screen, this is basically a Google form that any of you can fill, that who wants to just showcase something. And then we'll plan something, we'll discuss something, and we'll plan an event, maybe once a month, once in 2 months, or whatever works. But the idea is that eventually we actually do this exercise. We kind of, as a community, help and share ideas and share thoughts, do more of challenges. So it doesn't have to be like just me doing something or just Ronak doing something. Like if you have something that you want to take up, fill this form, you become the host of the event. So we are not even seen anywhere, right? So just like concluding thoughts. All the links of this, the document and also the form is available in the respective channels. So if you see the events tab, I have just now posted the form. And if you see the Wise channel, you have seen that Ashwin has posted the link where you can learn Wise, and I've also posted the link to the document that has the challenge.